time grief we go. Gotta learn to let it go. Once asleep, now awake, feeling every breath you take.
Welcome to Wake the F Up podcast, hosted by Alix and David Long, where we talk about living consciously and helping people uncover their essential selves so that they can stop sleepwalking through life. Our goal is to create a safe space where our guests can share how they've decided to wake the F up and become mindfulness experts through their own emotional healing journey. Welcome to Wake the F Up podcast. I am your host, Alix Long, along with my co-host and husband, David Long. We're so excited to be rolling through May. Hope everyone had a wonderful Mother's Day, and welcome back. We got a lot of feedback on our last podcast. People loved hearing about attachment theory and attachment styles, but one of the questions that we got asked in regards to mothering and mother wounds and all things mother was, what is a mother wound and how do you know if you have one? So that is actually a highly searched topic on the internet, and we got a ton of feedback on asking what that is. So today we're going to just dive into that a little bit, and then we're going to talk about how to heal or work on healing. Let me just say this about a mother wound. So your mother wound is just anything that happened to you in your early childhood or throughout your childhood that was imprinted by your mother. And her inability, and it also could, if it was severe enough, create an attachment style. If it was frequent enough and kept going, it could create an attachment style, and it could create an attachment disorder if it was on the long end of the spectrum. So a mother wound is just like an imprint in your, I'm going to say body because that's really how I think it manifests. Imprint on your body and your deep psyche, so the back part of your brain where you were not met with some need that you needed. And so in that you created a story in your brain, because the brain's job is actually to protect you and transmute that information and give you tools and get you to safety, right? So we need to be connected as humans. And so when we get information that we are doing something wrong, our brain will help us to kind of figure out the problem and solve the problem to get us to be in connection and in love, right? And as children, we need a lot of love, a lot of security, and a lot of safety. And so a lot of times these present as thoughts in your mind like, I'm not good enough. I think we've all heard me talk about this literally every episode. So, and in fact, every coaching client I have has this wound. They generally don't realize that they're coming to me for solutions and try to get over a problem, and they're struggling in current relationships or at their job, or, anything in life coaching can be, nutrition. It can be such minute things or things that seem like just need a little bit of help to get over the hump. And a lot of the rooted problems that we have in our life come from an inner child wound, and it can be from your father or your mother or any caregiver that told you a story that basically made you feel as though if you didn't change who you were not lovable, and you wouldn't receive the love that you need, and you wouldn't be accepted in your family. It's a hard concept to swallow, but it's actually quite common. And I don't know, as a mother myself, I don't know that you can walk this earth as a mother and not give some sort of mother wound. What that would mean is that as a mother, you would actually have to perfectly show up for every need your child had at every moment. And often, if any mothers out there are listening, you know that we don't always know what we need. Often we have deep desires on the inside to be hugged, and your children will push you away, tell you how much they hate you. And so it's really, you almost would have to be a mind reader. So settle down into your chair wherever you're listening. If you are a mother and you're noticing that your kids may have these, I don't know that we can be any type of parental guidance or caregiver without unconsciously giving these wounds. I think one of the things to think about as a mother is we have to accept that this journey is flawed. It is full of flaws. It's full of us being flawed. It's full of us putting our flaws and fears in the universe, and that sometimes can transmute into our children receiving information that we didn't intend to send, right? I know I'm guilty deeply of this, right? So I actually, not to share too much, I'm trying to back out of talking about my children as much, which is challenging. They're teenagers and they're starting to pay attention, and so I don't know that they're not actually listening fully, but they're definitely listening enough, and their teachers are listening, and everyone's listening. And so unavoidably, sometimes information gets back to them. But I would say that on Mother's Day, I got a beautiful card from one of my children, and thankfully, I've done enough work that I could read through the lines that my child was trying to tell me how sorry they were. And essentially, it was the theme of like, they never felt good enough. And they were sorry about it. And I thought to myself, like, I'm not sure. It was so many sorries. And it was like the most beautiful note to say, like, I love you so much. You've done such a great job as a mom. I'm sorry if I send you any message that's different than that. And I just thought, like, it made me cry, first of all, but what a powerful message that is. And I think that overarches how we start to feel at a young age, that we're sorry to our mother, because generally as a child, we always feel in the wrong, right? Like, and that we're so sorry that we couldn't be what they needed us to be in order to feel and receive the love that we think that we should be receiving. So we, in our heads, start to say like, oh, we're not good enough, or some part of us is wrong. And therefore, we feel all this shame and guilt. And I literally had this in a card, and I was thinking to myself, damn, now if this isn't a mother wound or some kind of inner child wound that has happened, and it has probably happened because of, gosh, multifaceted, right? Our walk was so intense. We've talked about this many times. Like, there's so many hospital visits, there's so many things that happened. I couldn't show up all the time, all the ways for everyone in that very hard situation. And to be honest, even today, I can't show up all the time, all the ways that my kids need me, even when life is pretty stable and there isn't, death looming in the background. So every mother out there today, if this activates you a little bit, just give yourself literally a hug. It helps to kind of sway from left to right. I teach this somatic exercise a lot. Swaying and hugging yourself is so important. It seems kind of ridiculous, but it's almost sort of the way that we actually solve the mother wound. So there isn't a person walking on this planet that probably doesn't have a mother wound of some sort, or an inner child wound. And you have to reparent the self. And I think that sometimes what we really need as people, definitely as children, and if we're reparenting the child, you need a hug. You need physical contact. You need less words, more action that shows that you are loved. And I think that's hard sometimes as a parent, because we're on the fly, we're busy, we're frustrated. Yeah.
I was just thinking while you were saying that we've talked about this before, about how, maybe it's just the struggle between with the reality that we need as humans connection, and primary connection with our family and our immediate caregivers, but we're also alone, and that struggle
that's interesting.
Needing the connection,
but trying to learn to become independent.
The truth is, I mean, whether you want to be independent or not, you live alone, really. I mean,
Well, that's a fascinating concept, especially if you think about, like, the role of a child is to grow up and gain independence, and then, they exert it and want it the more they get older.
I mean, I see that with our children a lot.
That's true.
They want our help, need our help, but also want to push you away and be their own person. And I feel the same way.
Well, and happiness is an inside job. So as we get older and get more independent, it's like, we talked about attachment styles last time. So review that podcast if you are wanting to learn more about maybe what you're struggling with in relationships and how your relationship style is. It's really interesting. But as you grow away from whatever attachment you had, like, that's interesting to think you're getting more and more alone, or more and more independent, and you need less and less of your.
And maybe the secure attachment style are people that
they have freedom to step away.
They're okay with that.
This sounds like a book, Dr. Long. This sounds like a book I want to read. This is really good. Yeah, really, really important. So, signs that you have a mother wound. Okay, so let's answer the question that our listeners were dying to know. Signs that you have a mother wound is you might be a perfectionist. You might struggle to people please. I find that people pleasing is probably, and perfectionism are probably the two highest ones for having a mother wound. And I think that they happen because we want to please our mothers. Our mothers are primarily, I think, in historical sense, and I love that this is shifting, I think the father role is changing quite a bit into a warmer, more nurturing, emotional energy. I think it's always been that for men, but I don't know why. I think the roles that the world has placed men into, that to provide and go to work, sometimes take them away from the home, and therefore there's less contact. It's a little bit more fun and rough play.
Yeah, I don't know fully. I suspect it has a lot to do with war. That's my personal opinion. A world war. I think that was a necessity for survival at the time, or felt to be a necessity for survival, for the man to go away, fight, not die, and provide. Separate. Withdrawn.
Right. Well, and I think hunters and gatherers, right? The men's role was to go out and to hunt.
Right.
The women were to gather and work as a unison. So it's interesting to think. I actually was coaching a mom last night, and we were talking about being a single mom, and she was dissolving a relationship that was unhealthy, and how much guilt she was carrying about single motherhood. And I can fully relate to how all she wanted for herself, her global desire, was to be independent and take care of herself fully and resource for her children in the best ways without feeling so pulled apart. Very hard to do as a single mom. And I was thinking, I told her, historically speaking, we grew up in tribes, and we had multiple women and multiple men all working together to, gather for the whole and hunt for the whole. And it wasn't the responsibility of a mother to fully do everything all the time. And I think, information age has come along, and we've learned so much and we want to do so much. But now we're mothers are so strapped. You have to have a perfect birthday party. Everybody's got to your house has to be perfectly decorated. The expectations we place on ourselves continue to rise and rise. And same with the men, provide more, and be home and show up emotionally speaking. All these things are really hard to meet, and I think if we don't learn to peel away, like we talked about in the last episode, the exterior expectations of us, our parenting is going to get worse and worse, because what we're doing is we're parenting for what the outside world needs us to be versus what the children in our home actually need, and who we can actually be in those scenarios. And that's it's something to caution in the world. I would say that the former mother of me, the one that probably gave the wounds that were written in that beautiful card, cared so much about other people's opinions of my family. And it took me outside of who I was and outside of my actual capabilities to focus on things that I don't think my kids really even cared about. It was something that just appeared to be, if you have this right, you've got it all together. Sort of energy.
Well, it's what you do when you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah. And I was raised in a house like that. I mean, I'm hopeful to bring my mother on so that we can talk about her childhood, which was a very much she was forced into, everything had to look right in a certain way. Manners were important. The way your Christmas card, the way you spoke, the way you dressed, everything. I mean, my mom was put into scenarios with her family where if you didn't have everything perfect, you were in trouble. And so as much as she tried to peel that away, her mother wounds were deeply to people please and deeply to be a perfectionistic person, to the point where I think it made it really challenging for her.
For the record, this has not gone away by any stretch.
It has not. And I think our mother wounds will be something, just embrace them. You have to almost, as I said, hug yourself, and there's always this somatic work to be done, and I talked about this with my client last night, which is our bodies are always doing two things. They're expanding and then they're contracting, right? So our muscles expand and contract, our heart expands and contracts, blood expands and contracts. Everything in our life is opening and closing, essentially. And so when you have a wound, your instinct is to close and just not expand, right? And it's not to open to the idea of exposing it, right? So I'm saying this is more woo-woo talk here. David's staring at me like I'm crazy. But it has a lot of science behind it. And so when we're in places where we feel like we have to hold in or hide from the truth of who we are so that people don't know that we're struggling with our need to be perfect for maybe something that was rooted in our motherhood or our mothers, we don't expand, we don't open up, we don't share, we don't get vulnerable, we stay closed off, we close in, our body locks up, we hold our muscles tight, we get a little anxious, a little diaphoretic, and all that's something to think about. If you feel yourself kind of holding in and you're hiding from people, you might be working on a mother wound, right? I don't think anything is not rooted in inner child, truthfully. I think everything that we have and feel on the inside is rooted in our childhood. And I hate to put that much pressure on us parents, but it's just the damn truth. Like, there's not one thing that I don't work on, and we're going to walk through it again. I've done this once before when Jamie and I originally did this about her job, and it was super, super powerful, way early days of the podcast. I'm going to have David actually fear chart me, and I call this the fear chart. That's an inaccurate title. I'd like to say sorry to Harville Hendricks for renaming your beautiful chart, which is actually called the Behavioral Request Change Form. I'll give credit where credit is due. My therapist, Jan Cahill, out of New Orleans, Louisiana, saved my life quite literally by giving me this chart. It has helped me identify my mother and inner child wounds, and it takes what the problem today, how it relates to your childhood, and why you're getting revved up and acting out a little bit and having a little inner child tantrum.
And the name is important, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Because
names are important. I started calling it the fear chart because it's out of ease, and that was like, and for me, it was about the fear. It was always about the fear was presented.
But really, it's about the behavior.
Right. We're changing your behavior, because if you want to work on your mother wound, and if you feel like you have to drive to perfection, if you feel as though you're not good enough, if you feel unlovable, if you feel you got to do everything for everyone all the time, and everybody has to be happy all the time, then you might have a mother wound.
And then join the club, and that's okay, as long as it's not affecting your behavior and interaction. That's the problem.
Right. None of this is insurmountable, is what he's saying. So my advice to you, somatically speaking, is these fears, these deep wounds live in our body. A story was imprinted in our brain and in our actual somatic body. The soma feels it. So when something triggers you or hits you with your mother wound, you can feel a physical kind of pain of some sort in your body. Now, that sounds a little outside the scope if we're not quite to that level of embodiment practice where we're like, what? I don't even feel my body. Start small, start to just take little moments to kind of tap into how you feel in your body when you're in emotional scenarios. Happiness feels expansive. Happiness feels like a chest opener. Not enoughness, unlovable feels pain in the chest. You feel stomach pain. You want to close off, right? Our body actually does these physical protections based on emotionality, right? It is your nervous system in action, and it was created originally to keep us safe from running away from tigers and all the things. Like, it transmuted into, I keep saying transmuted, I don't know why I've said that like 5 times now.
It's a good word.
Into emotional pain, because that's the reality we're living in right now, right? Where most of us aren't getting chased by tigers, and most of us aren't out there like foraging and hunting for our food. We're hitting the grocery store.
Yeah, I'm certainly not there yet. I can feel the extremes.
Yeah, okay, and that's okay, right? So
subtleties. I mean, if I'm having anxiety and I'm starting to get diaphoretic, I'm aware of that. But like a subtle little stomach ache or something like that, I probably won't.
I encourage people when they're building a somatic practice, and just stay with us. Wake Wellness, this is my overarching goal, is to get people to build a somatic awareness. And when you have introspection is the word, and that's a polyvagal term, your ability to go inside and feel your body versus always being in your thoughts, you really actually will have more intelligence. The body is quite intelligent. It knows the truth. And it's like when people say, oh, I have that gut feeling, I need to do this. The gut feeling, the body feeling is the right feeling, because the brain, of course, will create stories of your mother. And so like, your mother did something to leave you out. Your brain creates a story that you're unlovable. And then you change yourself to become lovable. And think about that. And I hate to say this in this terminology, but it's just the truth, because at this point in my life, our whole world crashed apart. Everyone judges widows all the time. Every decision. I'm pregnant. I'm 41. We're remarried. We blended. I mean, we literally have had family members tell us we're not living in reality. That was a recent ouch. That wasn't a mother wound, but it was a wound. And I was thinking to myself, actually, I'm living more in effing reality than anybody in the world. I mean, maybe not, but I'm living more in reality in my world than I have ever been in my life. And I was thinking about why these wounds are so problematic is that we don't live in reality. The reality of who we are is actually let go of, because we don't know how to connect with our true self, because we were taught to be someone else in order to be loved. And until you self-rely, independent yourself out of your mother and your father and your caregiver, and then you peel away what everyone else wants you to be, who am I? Is the question. We probably have this essential crisis, I don't know, 18 on. And a lot of us feel it as a midlife crisis in our 40s and 50s, because if you haven't done your work to figure out who you are and who you are without everyone else telling you who you are, you're going to have a midlife crisis because your coping strategies will fail by the time you're 40.
Yeah, and I think that can be so intense that you can just withdraw.
Well, that's when you get like the yellow Porsche convertible, have an affair, spend all your money. You see these all in forensic files. It's like every murder begins with like this whole crisis.
Yeah.
My coffee is really good. I'm sorry, I keep drinking it. Okay, so let's walk through how does a mother wound. We're going to use mother wound today. For years and years and years, probably almost a decade of therapy, of trauma therapy. I started trauma therapy when Carl was diagnosed. Obviously, it was quite some time ago, 2014. We're now 10 years later. I've done more trauma therapy on my father wound, truthfully, than I have on my mother wound. It's not till more recently that I've been unpacking some of the things like in my mother wound, and I would say I could answer this with my eyes closed for my father wound, but my mother wound has been a little bit harder for me to process because I would like to say that as children and as a daughter especially, we love our moms. We need our moms so much, and I think men feel the same way. Mm-hmm. We really, really need our moms, and so mother wounds are actually even more sticky. They're even more challenging to look at because we can't fathom that our mother may not love us. And that's the fear. That's not necessarily the truth, and most likely it's not. I mean, there's 100% cases of mothers who just couldn't show up for their children. But I promise you, even the most crazy wounded mother who couldn't show up and like abandoned her children and did like the worst case scenarios, she still loves her child. It is an innate emotion that happens. And it's just, how wounded are you and how available are you for giving to someone else, another human who solely depends on you. If you're not healthy, that's a really big challenge, right?
Yeah.
But we need our mothers. And so to be able to admit we have any problems with them is quite a threat to the ego. It's quite a threat to all parts of ourselves. So if you get very activated in trying to do this work, stay with it because it's okay. I think we need to redefine the fact that our parents cannot be perfect, and they will not be perfect for us. No needs can be met all the time by any other human, just ourselves. So this one's harder for me too. So we're going to do the behavioral change request form, I struggle with that title. And this we will link into our show notes. This was actually found in deep dive, good luck finding it, like actually when we had to pull it up to actually find the original. It's in a psychological textbook, really challenging to find, so we'll link it here. And I highly recommend and give this to all my clients to use this tool. This tool is fantastic. It will help you. So we take I would like to say initial like punch to the gut, body pain. That's how I feel when I get hit with a mother wound trigger. And then we say, like, I used to always say to myself in the early days of doing this chart, if I'm feeling an emotion, a dysregulated emotion, let me be clear, that I can't shake off. So anger that I can't shake off, frustration that I can't shake off. For me, I tend to not feel sadness that I can't shake off because that's way too transparent in the get-go. That's my underlying emotion.
You could just stop with anger.
Yeah, anger that you can't shake off, this is when you need this chart. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll walk through you can do the most benign scenarios. The first time I learned this was my garbage can liners. We've done this in the podcast before with Carl.
Okay.
Okay, so we start with what?
The frustrating behavior.
Okay, so David would say to me, if he was my therapist or if I'm doing this to myself, what is it that's frustrating you? And we're gonna relate this into something that's frustrating me that might be leading to a mother wound. What's frustrating me right now?
What about
so many things I can't pull one.
There's a lot of things. We could talk about kid grades. We could talk about
Okay, grades. No, that's not really
kids
frustrating me.
not showing up. We could talk about kids not listening. We could talk about your mom not showing up the way you want her to. Talk about.
Okay, well, I mean, this one will be hard for my mom, so...
We could talk about when you get angry at me.
I mean, we can talk about anything. We don't necessarily have to talk about your mom. That's the thing. I want to relate actually a benign thing so you can see that even the most insignificant or non-seemingly related thing actually links into your childhood. Okay, let's start with actually...
I like grades.
Great.
You get really frustrated and angry about grades.
I don't really. That's kind of... Do I?
Yeah.
I don't feel like I do, but maybe I do.
You do.
Okay,
for
fine.
Sure.
I guess I would be frustrated if I'm frustrated about anything. It's I have a child who is literally gifted, like documentedly gifted, who procrastinates, like just procrastinates like nobody's business, and it's like there's ADD too. So then I think I make all these excuses of like, why are you making yourself so miserable? And photographic in the mind too. So not that, I mean, I don't know how hard it is. Let me not say how hard it might be to get things done. But I get very frustrated that we wait till this very last second. Then we throw a tantrum, relatively speaking, about like how much stuff I have to do. And I'm like, well, you haven't done anything leading up to this. You stacked it all on yourself, and then that pressure comes, and then they perform. And they perform at a pretty high level considering how last minute they were. But then it's like just so much unnecessary. So yeah, I get frustrated.
That's the frustrating behavior. What is your feeling?
So when this happens, so I'm setting the tone for this just so they can understand. So in this scenario, what happens in the home is, you got anything?
Trust me, they know.
We got anything going on? Yeah. Do you have any homework? No. Do you have anything going on? No.
Right.
Oh yeah, I got that thing on Friday. I'll be fine. I'm doing great in my classes. I'm fine. And like, yeah, you check the grades. They're fine. Okay, cool. Perfect. I'm so happy that you don't yeah. So go ahead and jump on with your friends and do your thing and like balance. You're in charge of your own time. That sounds great. Okay, then let's just like take a little step down to Thursday, Friday, like whenever the due date is. Mm-hmm. Then we're angry. Then we're exploding on everyone. Then I have so much stuff to do. I can't like do my one chore of the week. And even that I don't care about because like whatever, someone can pitch in and do the chore. But just like then we're mad at everyone. And then like it's my problem. Usually I'm the punching bag of this scenario and like get screamed at.
So how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel, I would say, I mean, it actually makes me feel frustrated. Like, it's, what is your frustration? I feel angry. I feel frustrated. Not even angry. It's not even angry. It's actually like, and it's not disappointment because I'm not like disappointed in the behavior. I'm just like baffled and like, why do we keep doing this? And I don't know. Yeah.
She does get angry. Actually.
Angry.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the story that plays in your head?
Okay, so the story that plays in your head is sort of the voice. I'd like to say that, like, we all have this. The story in your head is actually like the brain's computation of your nervous system.
Yeah, the story is the most entertaining part.
It is. It's never true.
It's the crazy part.
It's the crazy piece that tries to keep you safe. And if you actually, like, Eckhart Tolle, who's like a very wise, like, essentially Buddhist who, you know, the power of now, like he's just like, if you become at his level of consciousness, you are just floating through life, like totally chill. He would say, be the watcher of the self. And what he means by being the watcher of the self is watching the thoughts in your head. And the thoughts in your head are the story. And the story that happens here is, so I'm super angry or frustrated that I'm getting punched at and that there's nothing going on. And then like, how could I not know? There's so much to be done. And the story is like, I'll never not be this source of the target of all the anger. That's the story that is in my head. I'll never not be the punching bag in my family. And that's a painful place. And if I'm honest, like, I don't know that that was a childhood thing. Actually, yes, it was. Keep going. We'll travel down the road.
So the story that plays in your head is that you'll always be the punching bag.
And what that means is I always was the aim or the target of everyone's frustration and anger.
This is not where I thought we were going with this at all. But okay.
See, you think you know your partner. And this is why it's good to do with your partner too, because if you're in a fight together and you do this, like you learn things about them that disarm your anger a lot. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry you feel that way, versus like, go fuck yourself.
What is your reactive behavior?
Shut down. With this scenario, I have a full shutdown. When I sense that I'm going to be someone's punching bag and that all the anger is coming down to me, I get extremely sad on the inside, but I go right into a frozen state. I shut completely down. I wall up, and I want to, when I'm blamed for everything and the source of receiving people's anger, I completely shut down.
Yeah, this is something I've learned from you. That I never knew before.
Inside, I am extremely sad.
I always just took it before when people would do that to me, which was common before. Betsy would do it to me. The kids would do it to me, and I thought that was my role, was to take it.
Yeah.
And I've watched you, and now I'm much more aware of when they're not yelling at me; they're just taking it out on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't tolerate it anymore. And if you try to stop it before it starts, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Or you just tell them, yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're not. You can be mad, but you're not taking it out on me.
Right. So there's a difference in parenting and even relationships where you are allowed to feel your feelings. Like, it's important that we allow each other to feel our feelings, because that's how we feel seen, right? But we know that when we do this chart, that people surface emotions. So my anger, my shutdown, isn't really, the shutdown is a reaction from my emotions. My inner emotions are, I'm deeply saddened that I'm always the source of everyone's frustration. That I'm what causes people. It's like my sheer presence brings people's anger out, is what you feel. Being alive makes people angry, being in presence of others. And so that's a deeply scary wound to feel. And I have felt that from multiple caregivers and every relationship I've been in, and now my children. So I'm like, my God, like, can I not be someone's punching bag for 5 minutes?
So what is your fear?
Yeah, I think I just said it. So I think my fear is that my sheer presence, like who I am as a person, is so not good enough that I make people angry. Just having to deal with me or love me or be in my presence makes people angry.
Okay. What is your childhood memory? What does this remind you of?
In my childhood?
Or does it remind you? Anything?
We're going to do it in relation to my mother wound, which, to be fair, was already drawn up in the first line. When you practice this enough, you'll know what the connection is. Like, a lot of times when I do this with David, this is why I didn't have me do him, which would have been a better natural fit, obviously. He will get stuck here. He's like, I don't have any memories. I don't know. So if that's the case, that's okay. Just remember that, like, if you struggle to pull memories...
Doesn't sound like that, but okay.
Sounds exactly like that. That might be a sign that you had to dissociate and literally get out of your own body in order to get through difficult emotionality throughout your life. And so that's a dissociation pattern. And no shaming in that. Remember, that's a survival skill, and that's what we're talking about. So the way we escape our mother wounds is we create survival skills. We change who we are. We do what we need to do to get ourselves safe. And dissociation, shutting down like I do, they're not healthy if you keep those patterns up forever, because you end up missing out on true connection with people that actually do want to show up for you, and that actually don't think you're a punching bag, that actually are able to hold your emotions. But we don't know that because we don't trust. So we just stay in the survival pattern, and we kind of ruin our lives because of that.
My therapist is really good about reminding me about that. Because I feel a lot of regret about some of those behaviors or some of the inability to remember.
Right, and they were helping you along the way.
And she's like, look, you survived.
Like what I tell my clients.
You're here today, and we're going to work through it. And it's okay. You don't need to regret your survival patterns.
Right, and we say this all the time. I'm going to repeat it. It's like one of the most important mantras as a human who's trying to heal. You can't know better until you do. And you can't do better until you know better. And so we have to be really kind when we're looking in the past, because this is all reflective work, right? It's all in the cognition. I like to take it into the body too, because that's really where the truth is. And you have to forgive the past, because when you create survival patterns, it's generally an unconscious place that protects you. So your nervous system sends a signal to your brain like, hey, whoa, we're at risk of being unloved.
Nobody teaches you. You figured it out.
Yeah. So my childhood memory will be as a child growing up with a mother with depression. And I think that my mom had depression she's had depression her whole life. Depression was not talked about, first of all. Like, in fact, we weren't even allowed to talk about it. So by the time I came along, I was 5th of 6 kids. I think that my mom had her coping strategies on strong and everything was working. My dad was like a great support system to her. And then when everyone started becoming teenagers, I think there was a lot of exactly what we talked about. My mom was probably going into her 40s by the time I got old enough to, need her in this kind of way. And I think her coping strategy started to fail for her. And I think her depression then peaked. And then there wasn't good resources for depression. Like, you didn't just hop to your doctor and talk about it. And you didn't go to therapy. We didn't start going to therapy until I was like a teenager. And that was like very frowned upon.
I think depression for families is extremely scary.
Super scary, because you kind of feel like your mom's going to die.
Right. It's so scary that the coping strategy is just to
shove it down. Right. So instead of actually addressing and understanding or anyone discussing the depression itself, we pretended that wasn't a thing. And then my mom's reactionary behavior a lot to me was anger. So if I needed a ride, we talk about this a lot. This is a really benign thing. So I would be waiting for my mom. She had a million things to do and a million kids to pick up. And I mean, God, now that I have as many kids as she does, I'm like, no wonder she was frustrated, because it's really hard to get it all done. And she didn't have the help she had help, but she did not have the help that we've instilled, because you need it. And so it's really challenging to be there for everyone. By the time she would pick me up, it'd be like super late, 45 minutes to an hour. She probably was flying around town doing a million things for everyone, trying to be people-pleasing and perfect, and then feeling like a failure, which would send her into a depression cycle, and she'd be furious when she picked me up. And so a lot of times, whatever scenario that I had to rely on my mom because I didn't have a driver's license, or you need your mom a lot, I would be met with anger. Yeah. I would be met with frustration. And the feeling that I felt in that time was that my existence was such a burden that that she was angry that she had me. And the funny thing was that the doctors told my mom that she couldn't have any more children because she had a very serious medical complication with her previous delivery. It wasn't because of the delivery of my sister, but just like a side issue happened, and she was in the ICU for months and months and months. My dad took home the infant. She couldn't breastfeed my sister. The doctors were like, "You're never having any more children." And so she, just like my mother, with parts I love about her, are stubborn and was like, "No, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to have another baby," because she loved having children. Had me, and the story that she told everyone around her was that I was her miracle, and she'll still tell that story to anyone who wants to know about it. And I'm sure there's truth to that, but that story was told so much that it imprinted me, where I had this one, to everyone outside of the world, I was a miracle, but inside her world, in our world together, I was met with this constant anger and frustration for just simply being alive and needing help. And it caused a lot of mother wounds for me. Perfectionistic, never asking for help, literally never. By probably 13, I would take the city bus to the mall if I wanted it. I literally didn't ask for help. And in fact, would get myself in trouble all the time, because not asking for help would lead me when I'd fail, because inevitably you can't do everything on your own. And then I would cause, I made my dad one time late for my sister's graduation because I wasn't packed and ready, but I really needed help because I had studied for finals in college and totally had no resources to do all the studying and get myself packed, to fly on a plane, to get, that kind of idea. And then everyone would be mad at me and I would ruin some kind of event. So this continued to spiral me throughout my life, where I would hold in and try to hold everything up myself. And often I had to people please and caregive too. That's another side of another version of the mother wound, that I had to take care of everyone all the time. And so I didn't have a lot of energy left for the self or time and space to prepare. And I was also, much like my child, a procrastinator with ADD who probably needed the pressure to perform. And so I was constantly being met with anger and disappointment by everyone all the time.
So that's a perfect segue into what the final part, or the second to final part. What is your global desire?
Gosh. And look how good I did. I didn't cry. So usually the childhood memory will make you kind of tear up a little, or at least the fear. My global desire, gosh, I just want to be in relationships where I feel valued. I feel like I'm lovable. I feel like people, here comes the tears. I don't want that my existence to make people angry. I want to be met with love, just like anyone. Like I feel like I've never really been met with love in my life until you. And I just want to be loved.
Yeah, I think that's global for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Maybe everybody. So this is the part we never do.
I never do this part because sometimes I'm like, I just want to know why.
This is the part where you're like, fuck it. But what are 3 ways to change your behavior, that you can change your behavior to meet this global desire?
It's important that we do this part today. So the ending piece of this is 3 ways to take control back. So how do you take back your power? We call this, when you have a survival skill that you're working, that you work subconsciously all the time, and then you identify that you're working from a survival pattern. So for me, my survival skill is to shut down and to push people away, right? If I can stay as isolated as possible, I don't get met with people's anger, and therefore I don't feel unlovable. So when my child comes at me with the anger, I put a wall up, I shut the door, I leave. And you know, the truth is it's a terrible parenting skill because both of us are left unmet with our needs, right? And I don't have an opportunity. So the 3 ways that I can work on this is boundaries. No. I believe in practicing boundaries and a no practice. Like if you have a mother wound, you most likely are working perfectionism and people pleasing. Codependent No More, best book you're ever going to read. I want you to get that damn book, put it on your nightstand and read it, because it's so much of this. It's about us feeling like we're in control of fixing everything for everyone all the time. And we probably started that from our mother wound. So 3 things that I can do to make this situation better would be I need to set a boundary. And I've started to do this because I'm aware of this wound deeply. Even today, I've said things I don't know that I've ever said out loud in therapy, but setting a boundary that I'm not going to be your punching bag today, that your anger, it's not fair, that you're taking all your anger out of me. I didn't deserve this, that your lack of preparation is what's got you frustrated, and I can understand that. How can I best assist you to get, more organized to where we can not have to wait to the last minute to feel pressure? And really the uncoupling for my child is, and myself too, what if we learn to work without pressure? What if anxiety isn't the catalyst that gets us into action? Most of us who suffer from ADD, I think it's a coping strategy that we have to have stress or sympathetic energy, that's your anxiety or anger, to get us to move towards productivity, because our brain will be like, firing 5,000 things in your head. So from that, I just want to say, if your children have ADD, and I have it myself, like there is this constant need for pressure and stress to get work done. So helping him learn that, because I have had to learn that and it's just really the last year or 2 that I've learned that, truthfully. So I need to help him uncouple that stress and anger is not what drives you to productivity. You can be productive without having that up energy. Mm-hmm. I think often if children have tried stimulants, it's the same. That is the actual feeling in the body, which is so interesting to think about somatic work, right? That stimulant that we take for ADD gives you an up vibe, which then makes you feel productive. And I'm not sure why that's been coupled. We can be calm and productive. Mm-hmm. Our work styles will vary. So teaching that would be a really good boundary for him. But for me, it's boundarying. No, you're not going to treat me this way. I love you. I'm sorry you're having a hard time. I am not the source of your anger. And it's not fair that you constantly come at me with your anger. I'm here to listen, but you're not going to take it out on me, aka like tell me how much I suck and don't understand you and I'm not there for you. So saying no, boundary, saying no. And I still think walking away without walling up. Like a lot of times when anger gets pretty severe with my kids or even us, I have to take some space because I physically feel that pain. And then when I physically feel that pain, I actually do a physical shutdown. I will not be able to be emotional with you for quite some time. And when I do the shutdown, it takes me a long time to come out of it. Longer than I'd like, over a day sometimes, at least 24 hours. And when I get there, it's my whole body shuts down. Like I feel unlovable in such a deep way, and it's really hard for me to work out of that.
Yeah, and that's a day of torture for me.
Right, and so like that hits his wound, which is like I'm shutting him off. Like, so, but with my kids, that probably, which they would never communicate this because that's just like, teenagers don't talk about this. Me shutting off like that is probably the worst thing I can do as a mom, because what they actually need is a hug, and they need me to stay regulated in their dysregulation. And as we talk about, if you're really working from the nervous system, our job as a mother is to take care of ourselves enough so that we can stay regulated when they get extremely dysregulated, because that's what we're teaching them. If we want to be a good parent, it's not actually to be perfect and never bring wounds in. It's stay as regulated as you can so that when they get dysregulated, they know that you're a beacon of safety and that it's okay for them to feel the spectrum of emotions, and they will learn to regulate themselves. Along the way. That takes time. I mean, I'm still working on that. We're all still working on that.
It's really hard to do. Because they say very mean things. It can be really hurtful.
So this chart will be in the notes today, but to work out of a mother wound, you have to reparent the self. You have to remother the self. And what kind of energy do you feel like you needed from your mom? Like, what energy would you say if you're going to remother yourself? Like, what do you need energetically? Will you pass me that water?
I don't know. I don't know.
Let's dig a little. It's hard when I ask David emotional questions. He struggles. He does. It takes him a minute, and I'm not sure if this is all men universally. I'm imagining it is, because you're very connected to your emotions, but it does take him time to get in there. I think men have to really, and unfortunately the world has set the stage for this, that you're taught to push it away so much and be stoic and be steady and be all these things that are not connected with emotion, that when asked what you need or what emotions you might feel that are deeper than just like high level surface emotions, I think it's really hard for all men to feel that. Women keep asking though, like, because just like any practice somatically, if you continue to have them reflect inside and look inside, that practice is like a muscle. It builds, the more you flex it, the more it works, and the more they'll understand themselves and be able to show up for you emotionally.
Yeah, I really don't know.
If you were, okay, let's just not think about your mother. That's a little heavy for you. A mother. Like, what emotions, what energy do you need from a mother? Like, what would anyone need from a mother? Or
I think availability, consistency.
Yeah, you've had that. Your mom is extremely available and consistent.
Yeah, she was. Nurturing the safe person, and my mom was that person for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. In my house, she was definitely the safe person. She was loving as best she could. Actually, I think she was kind of, was definitely made sure that our needs were provided for.
I love that.
Definitely more huggy. Like, she was the only person in the house that hugged us, for sure.
Yeah.
I think she compensated as best she could, actually, for my dad's stoicism and.
Well, and that's beautiful, right? So when we think about remothering ourselves, listen to what you just said, right? You need hugs. You need physical feeling of warmth and affection.
Yeah.
that's hard to get from yourself, but actually truly like the somatic work to hug yourself and sway left to right, like a rocking sensation. Close your eyes, you rock left, you rock right, like you're literally swaying and holding yourself. It sounds crazy, I'm aware. There is a visceral response in our body to being rocked.
Yeah, I mean, you always...
Being held.
I know, I was just thinking, you accuse me sometimes of not being able to remember a lot of things, but I actually do remember her holding me in the rocking chair a lot.
Yeah, that's so sweet.
I remember her when I would get upset about my brother or whatever. Yeah, she would hold me. Even when I was probably too big to be held, she would hold me on the couch. I remember she held me on the couch a lot. Or if I was sick, like she would sit on the couch with me for hours and just hold me while I was febrile or whatever.
Well, that's an amazing.
Yeah, and she was semi-permissive a little bit, you know? Like we would watch soap operas when I was sick, which was not, that was not great stuff. But yeah, it was okay. She would let me eat sweets. You know, she tried to
meet you where you needed to be met.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So if you're reparenting the self, you have to look at if it's a mother wound. Mother energy is warm. Mother energy is all loving. Mother energy is affectionate. Mother energy is soft. It's gentle. It's allowing you to be who you are. You really need your mother to love you as you are and like fill you with physical and emotional huggies and kissies. Like, you know, you're supposed to be nurtured and squeezed tight and physically wrapped up in full embrace and safety with your mom. And so that's what you need to provide to yourself. And so we have to really like affirm the self. So the inner voice, the story in your head is the fear that you're not lovable. And so you have to affirm, I am good enough. I am lovable. And in those scenarios, I have to say to myself, I'm not a punching bag. Not everybody that loves me is angry that I'm here, right? And so I have to continue to like, it is a positive self-talk. And I, you know, caution if your positive self-talking, your nervous system doesn't align with it, be careful. Like we're not trying to say like, lie to the self anymore. Like actually this is an unpairing of lies. Like we're taught to lie. Survival skills are really good, but they are a lie because we're hiding. And so
I think there's a difference between positive self-talk that's not true and then affirmation of gratitude. That's really what positive talk in my mind should be. Like what am I grateful for? Was my mind perfect? Definitely not.
No, but I think self-compassion, healing practices, therapy, there's lots of great therapists out there who can do shadow work. Shadow work is just inner child healing, working on the mother wound. You know, if you're suffering from depression or anything that's really dysregulating you, you know, there's so much information on the internet and a lot to access yourself, and it's not always affordable to go to therapy. But I had an interesting call from one of my employees, a guy on my team who's amazing, who has a friend who's suffered from depression his whole life and is sober and is doing some like independent mother wound work and has launched himself into like, my friend was afraid the friend might be suicidal. And I was thinking to myself, like, it doesn't surprise me that when we get into inner child work, so this is the deepest part of us, the stories imprinted here are what makes the voice in our head, the negative voice in your head, which is so mean, it is the place where we feel this unlovable. And so if you have to, that's deep therapeutic work. And so make sure if you're pulling some of this stuff to work on it yourself, you have a support system, whether it's someone else you can talk to, if you start to feel suicidal or, you know, thoughts of depression or things surface where you really feel so dysregulated you can't get yourself back to some sense of safety. You might need some therapeutic support. So this is heavy work, and some of us have had really confusing and complicated relationships with our mothers. And unless your mother is working on herself, like my mom works on herself so much, and she still has a lot to work out of, but I can talk about her and to her and how brave is she that she can listen to this and actually still really show it for me and tell me how proud she is of me and how much she loves me and how I'm an inspiration. I mean, you know, it's crazy to like think like,
oh, your mom's amazing.
My kids come to me with the wounds I've given them, and I'm like, I spiral and have to lay down and cry for a little while. Like I haven't gotten that bravery that my mom does, that she understands. Like she did the best that she could, and she had a lot against her, and her childhood was really challenging, and those expectations of her as the oldest of 14 kids, she rolled right into her marriage with really poor coping strategies. And so it's taken her a long time to pull out of a lot of these, and she's still working on it. I don't know that this work is ever done. I just know that if you do somatic work and you can sit in your body, you can feel the trigger coming on before it even registers in your brain. You can take a moment to parent the self, mother the self, and then that means self-care. Self-care is not selfish. It is actually taking care of yourself so you can show up for your loved ones in a more full capacity. So
yeah, and I think that's a great place to wrap up today's podcast.
I love when you do that. This makes me laugh. Let's talk about why Mr. needs to run out the door.
Yeah.
He has 6 surgical cases that he's super late for because someone didn't want to get out of bed this morning.
I'm so much better in the morning.
Yeah, morning. We're doing this in the morning. We normally do it at night. This is funny. So I had to laugh this morning. He was snuggy, didn't want to get out of bed at the time he should have to be on time. And I was like, don't try to race out of here because...
That's okay. This was good. We did a fear chart, which was really good. That was interesting. Totally different than I thought where we were going with that.
Yeah. So we'll have all these tools in the show notes, and reach out with your questions, DM us. We're rolling into the rest of the Mother Month. We've got kids graduating around here. We've got a daughter going abroad. We're busy, and so we're in mothering right now.
And as always, please like and subscribe, right?
Like and subscribe, and stay tuned. We've got lots of tools coming out. Our website is finally almost finished. We're working on our Kajabi courses. We're going to have all of these resources that will roll into more of like the stuff we're putting out here. We got resources on the app that then you can buy a course if you want to dive deeper into some of these mother wounds. So stay tuned. We're working really hard behind the scenes, and 2025 is going to be a really good year for Wake.
2025?
Yeah.
What's wrong with 2024?
And 2024. I'm just saying, we're growing. By 2025, this is going to be a well-oiled machinery.
That'd be good.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining us, and have a wonderful day. Stay awake, work on your mother wound, notice what's happening in your body, and do your somatic work. It's the most honest work you can do. Keep parenting the self.
This has been Wake the F Up podcast, hosted by Alix and David Long. Be sure to check out other episodes where our community of experts share tools and ideas to help you wake to the life inside of you. If you enjoyed this episode of Wake the F Up, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join the Wake community by downloading our app. Just search for The Wake Wellness in the Apple or Android App Store. And follow us on Instagram at The Wake Wellness. Thanks for listening.